नाद लोलुडे ब्रह्मानंद मंदवे मनस 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 नाद लोलुडे ब्रह्मानंद मंदवे स्वादु फल प्रद सप्त स्वादु फल प्रद सप्त स्वर राग निचय सहित स्वादु फल प्रद सप्त स्वर राग निचय सहित स्वादु फल प्रद सप्त स्वर राग निचय सहित नाद लोलुडे ब्रह्मानंद मंदवे मनस नाद लोलुडे ब्रह्मानंद मंदवे हरिहरात्म भूसुरपति हरिहरात्म भूसुरपति हरिहरात्म भूसुरपति शरजन्म गणेशादि हरिहरात्म भूसुरपति शरजन्म गणेशादि परमोनुलु पाशिल्चरे धर त्याग राजु देलियो वरमोनुलु पाशिल्चरे धर त्याग राजु देलियो नाद लोलुडे ब्रह्मानंद मंदवे मनस नाद लोलुडे ब्रह्मानंद मंदवे Namaskarams and a very good morning to all of you. Today I have taken up the topic of notes and ragas. This composition of Tyagaraja that I selected to sing today has got a lot to do with my subject, where Sri Tyagaraja says that, O mind, in order to attain bliss, please dwell on nada, swara, the saptaswaras, and the ragas. So in order to attain supreme bliss, it is important for us to immerse ourselves in nada, the saptaswaras, and the ragas. Of course, the concept of nada is very mystical in the sense that our scriptures have told us about the ahatanada, anahatanada, and so on. And nada is something very sukshma also. And that is something which only the saints and the great people like Dikshidhar or Tyagaraja could really experience. So I will not be touching upon Nada today because of the fact that we are all mere mortals and we cannot really understand or rather experience Nada. But definitely we can experience the Saptaswaras and the Ragas. So I thought I will take up only the topic which I've chosen today of about notes and ragas, that is the swaras and the ragas forming it. Now if we, in fact, so many lecture demonstrations we've been hearing, and we talk about composers, we talk about compositions, we talk about raga lakshanas, and so many things we talk about. But the fundamental of all this is the notes and ragas, and so I thought I will dwell upon it today. Now, if we, for a simple example I could give you, we look at a multi-story building. Probably people who have visited Dubai would immediately think of the Burj Khalifa, which I'm talking about, one of the tallest buildings, or some other very high skyscrapers you may think about. So when we're looking at a very multi-story kind of a building, we look at the top and we say that, oh, it looks so beautiful. But then the point is that it needs to have a very strong base if it has to be developed to so many stories. So similarly, we see that in music also, we may have so many compositions, we may have so much of manodharma being performed by the artist and so on. But the edifice of all this is the raga and the notes. So today I thought we will go deeper, rather dig deeper into the concept of notes and ragas, because if we understand them in the right perspective, I feel that we could probably understand the whole system of music itself in a very beautiful way. Before we move on to the notes, also we could compare this to language itself, in the sense that if you look at any language for that matter, it is used for rather as a means of communication. If you look at the English language, we have basically 26 alphabets. And these alphabets combine together in a proper way to give us words. Now the words again put together in a coherent way gives us a sentence, and a number of sentences put together again in a meaningful way give us a proper essay or a paragraph. So for example, if you take, suppose I tell you OOBK, now you'd be wondering what am I trying to say, because it doesn't make any sense. But now if I try to put it together in a proper way and say BOOK, then immediately you understand that what I'm conveying is book. And an imagery of a book comes into your mind. It may be any book that you have read or you have seen. Now, next I will try to put it into a sentence and say that this book is very interesting to read. Probably I want to develop further on that and say that, okay, this book is by, say, Thomas Hardy. This is a book of fiction. This is very interesting. It talks about this and so on. You just keep on elaborating on it. So similarly, we could also say that music is also a beautiful language. A language where it is about communicating multifarious things, I would say, in terms of especially our Carnatic music, I would say, where I always say that our system is so beautiful, so profound, where whatever you seek, you get. That is the beauty of the system. Where if you want to seek something, looking for some mathematical elements, scientific elements, the art elements, the spiritual elements, or the philosophical elements, or some religious doctrines, or if you want to look at melody, rhythm, or the profound beauty of poetry, greatness that the system has, where unlike other systems of music, you find that everything that you want is available in the whole system itself. Now coming to the names of the swaras. We all know that we have Sarigama Padani as the Saptaswaras in our system. And of course, how these names have come is also very, very interesting. In the sense that the word Shadja, when you talk about Shadja, it means, Shad means, 6. So that swara which is able to generate 6 more notes. So the sa is actually able to generate re, ga, ma, pa, dha, ni. So that is how the name Shadja has come, which we commonly call as sa. So like sa, sa, re, ga, ma, pa, da, ni. So 6 swaras emanating from this Shadja. The Panchama, the name itself signifies that note which is the 5th in the order. Sa, re, ga, ma, pa. Madhyama means the middle point. So, between the 7 notes, sa, re, ga, ma is the middle point. Pa, dha, ni. So, that is how the Madhyama got its name. For Ri, Ga, Dha and Ni, there are many interpretations. We'll not go into all that. But the basics, Sa and Pa, which we call as the Avikrita swaras, that is those swaras which cannot be oscillated or have variants. We'll talk about it in detail later. Also, we call the Shadja as the Prakriti swara, that is that swara which can generate all the other notes. So, we have to also understand the importance of Shadja, especially in the context of Indian classical music, especially if it's Hindustani or Carnatic, whatever it is. The whole system actually makes sense only in the context of the Shadja. Now, if I switch off the Shruti box and sing something, you may not be able to identify whether that is Gandhara or Ri or Ma or Pa, because what is Ga in one Shruti may be Pa for another Shruti. So the Sa, or the fundamental Shadja that we're talking about, is very, very important for the whole system itself. In fact, I would say that that is the basic edifice on which the whole system itself evolves and revolves. Now, coming to the swara varieties, it is very interesting. Like I said, for alphabets, we have 26 alphabets, but whereas in Carnatic music, we have just about 7 swaras. But the amazing number of permutation combinations which is possible just with these 7 swaras, their varieties, is absolutely mind-boggling. In fact, if you look at the ragas, the permutation combination possible through these swaras, that is the 12 swaras and the 16 swarasthanas, it is said that it is possible to have 7.2 million raga combinations. If you do it mathematically, you can get 7.2 million. But then, of course, in practical parlance, we see that only 5,000 of them have got names. If you look at the naming of the ragas, about 5,000. And what is in vogue generally are about 400, but most commonly we see there are only about 150 to 200 ragams that we are using in the concert circuit. Now, coming back to the swaras, we have got, again, it is a beautiful evolution, I would say. This, I will not go into the history now, but because that will become too large, and I would not be able to handle the other subjects here. But historically, what is important is that how our ancestors have evolved this beautiful system of 7 swaras, 12 swaras, then after that you have the 12 varieties and the 16 swarasthanas. If you go back to the time of the Vedas, we know that there was a single note which became 2 notes, then the 3 notes. Then we also have parallelly here in the Tamil literature, the Vattapalai, which gave the cycle of 5th and other things, for us to understand the concept of notes, the relation of notes and so on. And today we have evolved a system which is so complete in itself that you cannot really add any more swara to it. That is how it is, and this also applies to the 72 Melagartha of Sri Govindacharya, where he has really challenged and said that there can be nobody in this world who can add one more to what I have done. So the whole system of swaras, the whole system of the Melagarthas are so complete in itself, both scientifically and artistically. Coming back to the swaras, we have, if you take Maya Malagala for example, sa re ga ma pa da ni sa sa ni da pa ma ga re sa. Now, just for our understanding, I'll sing the 2 varieties of each note. Then we'll go into the 16 swarasthanas. Sa ri sa ri. These are the 2 varieties of Ri. Sa ga, sa ga. Two varieties of ga. Then sa ma, sa ma, sa pa. Then dha. Pa dha, pa da. Then ni. Pa ni, sa. Now, this is the concept on which the Hindustani system operates, where you have only just two varieties, Komal and Tivra. But we have evolved a more sophisticated and intricate system where we have three swarasthanas, actually for Ri, three for Ga, two for Ma, three for Dha, and three for Ni. So it is based on this permutation combination of the 16 swarasthanas that the 72 Melakartas have evolved. You have to understand that. Based on certain rules, of course, there are certain rules as to what note can combine with what note. But how then this 12, which I was talking about, has become 16? Let us demonstrate and see. First, the Rishabha. Sa ri, sa ri, sa ri. Now the third Ri strikes a chord with Nate, which you would have heard sometime in your life. Sa ri ga. You would have heard that Rishabha in Nate. That third Rishabha is not very frequently used as the 1 and 2, but it occurs occasionally, like in a common ragam which I said about Nate. Now let's look at the Gandhara. The Gandhara is Sa ga 1, Sa ga 2, Sa ga 3. So three varieties of Ri, three varieties of Ga finished. In Madhyama, we have only two varieties, Shuddha Madhyama and the Prati Madhyama. Ma, Shuddha Madhyama, Ma, Prati Madhyama, then the Pa. Pa. Coming to the Dha, again three varieties. Pa, Dha, Pa, Da, Pa, Da. So there are three varieties of Dha. Then coming to Ni. Pa, Ni, Pa, Ni, Pa, Ni, Sa. So let us now sing all of them in succession and see. Sa, Re, 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 Ga, 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 Ma, 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 Pa, Dha, Dha, Da, Da, Ni, 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 Sa. Now for a common Rasika, this may be slightly difficult to comprehend because all of them are placed so close to each other. But again, as I said, through constant, just like we learn music through constant listening, you can definitely also learn to differentiate the different swaras and swarasthanas. Now, based on this concept which I was talking about, the three Rishabha, three Gandhara, two Madhyama, three Dhaivata and three Nishada, by permutation combination, we evolve what is called as the 72 Melakartas. Now, the next point about the swaras we have to understand is the concept of sthai or the octave. In Indian system of music, we see that it is not just about sa, re, ga, ma, pa, da, ni, sa. That is not the only range that we operate on. We have what we also have this called the mandrasthai or the lower octave and the tarasthai or the higher octave. So how? If you just want to traverse a bit towards the mandrasthai and to the upper sthai, how would it sound? Sa, ni, da, pa, pa, da, ni, sa, re, ga, ma, pa, da, ni, sa, re, ga, ma, pa, pa, ma, ga, re, sa, ni, da, pa, ma, ga, re, sa, ni, da, pa. So this is the basic requirement for any musician. If you're going to learn music, this concept of from the mandrapa to the tarapa is a basic requisite. Now, why don't I say that it has to be more in the lower octave or more in the higher octave is because of the fact that all our compositions actually encompass only this range. If you look at any composition, it will not go below the mandrapa, nor will any composition go above the Tara Panchama. So that pa da ni sa re ga ma pa da ni sa re ga ma pa ma ga re sa ni da pa ma ga re sa ni da pa. Any composition you can analyze, you will see that it is within this range. Of course, there are exceptions in the vocal genre to some extraordinary musicians who are able to traverse much more than this, in the sense that below the pa till the mandrasa or till higher sa in the tara, you would probably, as Rasikas, immediately think of Dr. Balamurali Krishna, who can really, with complete ease, I would say, rather I would say effortlessly, he does that. Or I also remember one occasion vividly when myself and Mudra Bhaskar happened to go to Dr. K.J. Yesudas' house for an interview. So where at that time he was talking about music and he demonstrated, and he has that whole old type of piano in his house. So right from the first key to the last key, he played and he sang the entire gamut of the octaves in that piano, with complete ease. So there are some exceptional musicians who can traverse much beyond what I'm talking, but the basic requisite for any musician is what I talked about now. Now, coming to the notes, we have a very systematic way. Everything is very, very systematic, scientific in our system, and that is the beauty of the whole system. I'm not demeaning any other system, but if you look at film music, it can be like you start off in some note, some ragam, it can digress to anything, and nobody can even question you, because that is the very system, how it operates, where it is not necessary for somebody to put everything into the mold of a ragam, and if somebody starts a composition in a cine music in Kiravani and he moves on to Kalyani, you cannot even question him and ask him, why did you go off to Kalyani? Because the system itself is such that it allows for that kind of a freedom. Whereas our system is such that where you have certain very rigid rules which you have to follow. But immediately that makes many people think, oh, this is a very disciplined system, very tough system, and very difficult to master. I would say that this is not true, because of the fact that some kind of a discipline, whether be it life or music, is definitely essential. Here you could take a classic example of a common life experience where, suppose you are running, and I ask you to run from here to that end of the auditorium. Then you have a sense of distance, and once you reach that end of the auditorium, there is a sense of accomplishment that you've reached the end. Now suppose I tell you, run, just run, and you keep on running, and there is no end or destination. Then the running itself becomes so meaningless, according to me. So that's what I also compare our Carnatic music also, where we could probably say that the Arohana, Avarona, the Raga Lakshana, all of it give us some kind of a beautiful circle. It's a beautiful circle that is drawn for us through the Arohana, Avana, the Lakshanas demanded by the Ragam and all that. But we have to also understand that within that circle, there are immense beautiful possibilities. And that is what makes the system so great. Because you are bound by rules, you are bound by discipline, but within that sense of discipline, there are so many immense, beautiful possibilities that are given to us. And that is also the reason you are able to, as Rasika, because of the fact or the concept of raga, you are able to travel along with the musician. Now, if I start singing a raga alapana, say suddenly I start Amritavarshni and in between I bring in Kalyani and then a bit of Kambodi and Bhairavi and whatever I want into it, you will not get any imagery. So that raga actually is a beautiful concept of giving a sense of imagery to the musician, and he is conveying that imagery to you. So where this connect also happens, because I put you into the mold of that particular ragam, you are actually getting immersed into the ragam, and then I show you all the possibilities in that ragam, and you are also getting into the fold, and that connect happens, you are able to enjoy. So this ragam actually, we have to understand, is not about just disciplining somebody, but it is about a kind of a beautiful circle given to us for us to enjoy within a certain limit. And if you look at performance, the performance actually is nothing but a continuous effort by the musician to bring to you the raga in its different dimension. We have the compositions of different composers. We have the manodharma aspects like raga, alapana, neraval, kalpanaswaram, tanam, and so on. So there are different ways in which artist brings or rather unfolds the ragam to you. Now, if we look at the Carnatic music system itself, we see that we have three basic components, which all of us are aware of, that raga, the tala, and the lyrics. And they come together in different ways to give us a variety of forms. That is also the beauty of the system, where you see that the raga manifests itself through various means. Like how I said in the manodharma, we have the raga, alapana, neraval, swaram, tanam. Even in compositions, we find a wide variety, right from, you see, from the Geetam to the Varnam, Kriti, Kirtana, Tillana, then Tevaram, whatever forms are there, different forms are there in our music. So each form actually manifests the ragam in a different way. And that is why also this variety which you are able to see, it may be like the ragam is there in everything, but then the ragam manifests itself in different ways, in different forms. For example, if you take the Varnam, you see that in the Varnam, there are limited number of words and there are more of vowels. This you would have heard in any demonstration also, you would have seen like Ninnu Kori Yona Nure, where A, I, U, that kind of vowels are predominant. So here the idea is not the focus on the lyrics or the Artha Bhava, but the focus is more on the melody and bringing out the lakshana of the ragam. So that is, say Mohanam, suppose I take another composition. Bhuvanetraya sammohanakara shastaram bhaje bhuvanetraya. So immediately there is a concept of the lyrics here. You think about Ayyappan, Shasta, and all these things. So here the ragam also encompasses the concept of the lyrical element into it. We talk about, even for musicians for that matter, we say what is Kalyani, what is Kambodi, what is Kararapriya, means everybody can explain to you, saying that Kalyani takes these notes, or Shankarabharanam takes these notes, or Kambodi takes these notes. But simply if you ask somebody, what is a raga? Sometimes you are like blank. You really don't, you know that it is there, you know it is very concrete, but the whole idea seems very abstract. So first of all, let us look at to see what is a raga. Raga, if you look at it, it is the core material of our Carnatic music, as I said earlier, and along with tala and sahitya, it gives us different ways of communication are present in a performance. Raga again is a musical entity, I would say. Entity like probably you could compare it to human beings also. Every one of us have a distinct character. Somebody I call Suresh or Ramesh or Raji or Sudha or somebody like that. Immediately if you know somebody of that name, you think of the character of that person. So similarly, when I say Kalyani, you think of a character for that Kalyani. If I say Shankarabharanam, you think of a character. Now, of course, the character is again very, very relative in the sense that if Sudha is my own sister, I would know her much deeper than if a Sudha is some neighbor. So the relative kind of, the connectivity that is happening here is that as a neighbor, I probably just know that she resides somewhere 4 houses away from me, or she has a daughter and she has a son or something like that. But when it is my own sister, I get to know the internal character of the person. I know her physically, mentally, what are the tastes, what are her choices, and so many things we come to know closely. So even for a Rasika, for that matter, I would say that there are different levels in which you really understand the ragam. So first of all, when you are introduced, a ragam is newly introduced, it will be probably like a distant neighbor only to you, where you just get to know, and probably you may think that Kalyani na Unnayallal, Eta Unara. Like this, you'll be thinking of some names or songs and you'll connect. But as you go deeper into the journey as a Rasika, You then, next level, what you do, Kalyani itself, you will start thinking, okay, I know this song. Let me try to find out some more songs which are in the same ragam. After that, you try to find some kind of a connection in terms of the melody of the different compositions. Then, of course, probably you would look into the Arohana, Avarohana. Then, probably when you start developing more interest and you even start learning music, then you start understanding the Swarasthanas. So there are different levels actually for a Rasika also to understand the ragam, and that's what makes it very, very interesting. And we can say that there is no saturation point here, because there are so many intermediary levels in which you can experience the ragam and travel along with the ragam in terms of the journey here. And of course, for a performer, it is much deeper, because for him, it is more about the lakshana of the ragam, what is the gamaka employed in that ragam, what are the closely allied ragams, what are the ragams which are not connected to this. Like this, so many other aspects also, the performer angle is different. But for a rasika, this is the beautiful journey first when you are initiated into the ragam, and then after that, slowly you develop a kind of a connect, and you try to develop your knowledge also about the particular raga. Now, coming to the ragam itself, there are, like, I would say, different, again, comparing to human beings, ragams also display different characters. And yet, every character is so beautiful in the sense that they reveal beauty in completeness. That is, some ragas are complete in itself. For example, if you take a ragam like Shankarabharanam, sa ri ga ma pa da ni sa sa ni da pa ma ga ri sa, or Kiravani, sa ri ga ma pa da ni sa sa ni da pa ma ga ri sa. Like this, all the 72 Melagarthas are complete. So there is a beauty in completeness. Now, sometimes it may not be complete. The incompleteness also adds beauty. So, for example, if you take a ragam like Mohanam or Hindolam, they are not complete in terms of the scale. Sa ga ma da ni sa sa ni da ba ga sa sa ri ga ba da sa sa da ba ga ri sa. So, where some notes are missing, but nevertheless they have their own aesthetic beauty. So, the first point is of completeness. Second is incompleteness, but nevertheless beautiful. Then the question of symmetry. Symmetry, like in Mohanam, you see, where the Arohanam and the Avarohanam have got the same kind of a movement. 5 note upwards, 5 note downwards. Sa ri ga pa da sa sa da pa ga ri sa. So that is a beauty. Sometimes there is asymmetry, and that's also very beautiful, like in Bilahari. Sa ri ga pa da sa sa ni da pa ma ga ri sa, or Kalyana Vasantam. Sa ga ma da ni sa sa ni da pa ma ga ri sa, or Arabi. Sa re ma pa da sa sa ni da pa ma ga ri sa. So this asymmetry also adds some kind of a beauty. Or sometimes allowing foreign notes to come in. Now, allowing foreign notes also we could probably compare to some guest coming into our house, where sometimes the guest comes and settles down for a very long time. Sometimes they just come and peep in for a while and go away. So in this also we see that there are ragas like, for example, if you take Bhairavi, where the guest is properly settled into the house very comfortably. Sa ga ri ga ma pa da ni sa sa ni da pa ma ga ri sa. In fact, in Bhairavi, the guest is so well settled that you really don't even know the difference between the host and the guest here. If I ask you which Daivata is the host and which is the guest here, I'm sure many of you will be wondering, because the guest happens in the Arohana and the host comes in the Avarohana. Like, sa ga ri ga ma pa da, that is the Bhashanga or the foreign note. Sa ga ri ga ma pa da ni sa sa ni da, the host is coming later only here. Sa ni da pa ma ga ri sa. So where you see that in some houses you would have seen some relative, very predominantly coming into the house and occupying a very important place. Like that, I would say in Bhairavi, the Chatushriti Daivata actually comes in and settles down so beautifully. But sometimes you see that the foreign note is not a part of the scale, but then it just peeps in here and there to add beauty to the raga. Like for example, if you take Kambodhi, Sari ga ma pada sa sa ni da pa ma ga re sa, Sari ga ma pada ma ga pada sa sa ni da, where that ni variety 2, sa ni da pa ma ga re sa, that is the original ni, being a janya of Hari Kambodhi. But then in certain phrases you would see that Kaisiki Nishadam, Sani Pada Sa. Usually the ni 2 will only come Sani Da Pada Sani Da Pada Sari Sani Da. But occasionally that beauty Sa Sa Sani Pada Sa. So that foreign note, though it does not belong to the scale as such, it peeps in here and there very beautifully. Or sometimes, for example, another example we could take is the concept of discordance, what we call as the Vivaditva. Earlier times, it was a taboo to even teach Vivadi Ragams, and they said that it was very discordant and not pleasant and all. But today we see that the concept has changed totally, where Vivadi Ragas have become an integral part of concerts, and artists really love to perform Vivadi Ragas. In fact, even Ragam Tanam Pallavis, you see that they are performed in many beautiful Vivadi Ragams are taken. For example, if you take Chalanata, which has got 2 Vivadi Swaras, the Rishabha and the Dhaivata. Sari ga ma pada ni sa sa ni da pa ma ga ri sa sari ga ma pa ma ga ri ga ma pa da pa ma ga ga ma pa da ni sa ni da pa ma ga ri sa ye dai ya ga ti ye na ke dai ya ga ti ye na ke dai Yagati. Or just the opposite Vivaditva, where you take the first variety like Kanakangi. Sare ga ma pada ni sa sa ni da pa ma ga ri sa. Then we have scales which leap, jump from one place to another. We'll be talking about all this in a more detailed manner, so I will just go into the idea. I wanted to show that it is not just about completeness that is the aesthetics of our ragas. The aesthetics lies in so many different ways. As I said, once again summing up, completeness, incompleteness, intrusion of a foreign note, or sometimes jumping, sometimes in a zigzag manner, sometimes the symmetry, sometimes the asymmetry. So there are different ways in which the ragas are formed to lend us aesthetic beauty. Also, we must understand that though in a kacheri, the main item we take as like Kalyani, Kambodhi, Bhairavi, Todi, Saveri, what we call as the heavy or the Ganaragams which offer scope. But that does not diminish the value of the other ragams, because every ragam has got its own context, its own place in the gamut of the concert. So now imagine somebody singing a whole concert starting with Bhairavi, then Kalyani, Todi, Kambodhi, Saveri, Sahana, etc. Then the kinds of heaviness sets in. So ragam like say a Revati or a Madhuvanti or a Brindavani, it has got its own beautiful place in terms of probably featuring as a tukada item. or a bahudari can be a sub-main item, a filler in between. So you actually, there is no concept like, I won't say that these are great ragams and these are very small ragams. It is not like that. Every ragam has its own beautiful place in the gamut of our music, and also in the context of the concert, we see that every ragam fits in beautifully in its own original place here. Now coming back to the complete scales which I was mentioning, we have got examples, once again we'll just recap like all the 72 Melagarthas, just a few common examples we could give. Todi, Shankarabharanam, Kalyani, Kiravani, Kararapriya, Shanmugapriya, or you can take lesser known ones like Kanakangi, Ratnangi, Ganamurti, Nitimati, Rasikapriya, and so on. So these 72 Melagarthas, we could probably, they are the ones which could be falling in the category of what we call as a complete gamut of the raga. Then we have what is called as the, what I was telling about the omission of notes. In that, actually, interestingly, in the 5-note category, we have many ragams actually coming in. And they are also very interesting to listen to. For example, I'll sing to you some ragas. You can just see how there are only 5 notes in all of them, but then how each one gives a different picture to you because of the combination of the notes as well as the combination of the variety of notes. Both are there. Sa ri ga pa da sa da 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 sa da pa ga ri ga pa da sa da pa ga ri ga 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 ri ga pa ga ri sa ri ga pa ga ri sa sa ga ma da 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 ma ga sa 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 ga ma da ni da da ma ga sa ga ma da ni sa 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 ni da ma ga sa sa ri ga ma ma ga ri sa ri ga ma da 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 sa da ma ga ri ga ma da sa da ma ga ri ga 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 pa ga ri ga 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 pa ni sa ni pa ga ri ga 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 ni pa ga ri sa ri ga pa ga ri sa 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 ga ga ma ma pa ni ma ma pa ni pa ni sa 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 ni pa ma ni pa ma ga 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 sa 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 ga ma pa ga ma pa ma pa ni pa ni pa ma ga ga ma pa ni pa ma ga ma ga sa 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 ri ma ma pa ni ma ma pa ni pa ni sa sa pa ni ma pa re ma ma sa ri ni sa ri ma ma pa ni ma ma pa ni pa ma re ma pa ni pa ma re ma pa ma ri sa re ma ma re ma pa ni pa ma re ma pa ni sa ni pa ma re ma pa ma ri sa ga ma pa ni sa ni pa ma ga sa ga ga ma sa ga ma pa ni sa ni pa ma ni pa ma ga sa. So you saw that all of them had only 5 notes. But so many varieties we were able to generate with the permutation combination of these 5 notes as swaras as well as the variety of swaras. Now coming back to, thank you, coming back to the asymmetry, we see that many examples which you are hearing as part of the kacheri, sa re ga pa da sa ni da pa ma ga ri sa, which I mentioned earlier, bilahari, or a common, another more common, sa ri ma pa da sa ni da pa ma ga ri sa, where you saw there are 5 notes in the arohana and 7 notes in the avarohana. Or another example which I mentioned before also, like Kalyana Vasantam or Shama, Arabhi. Like this, there are many ragas. I'm just giving you a few common examples so that you can relate to it. Then coming to the foreign notes, we already discussed about that. Then the next interesting concept is in our system of music is very beautiful about the zigzag movement. In human beings also we see that not everybody is straightforward, some people are very vakra. And but even in that vakratva, it's not about a negative attribute, I would say. Some people's vakratva is very, very interesting for us to study also. So similarly, in our raga system also we see that there are many ragams which are of the vakra nature, but they lend a distinct kind of a beauty. So for example, if you take, again in vakratva we see that some of them, they have a straight approach upward, and then coming back you see it's vakra. Or sometimes you see that both the arona and the avarona both are vakra. So for example, if you take sa re ma pa da ni sa ni da pa ma ri ga ri sa, darbar, where you saw that it was a straight approach upward, but while coming back it was vakra. Now if you take an example of ragam like Riti Gaula, sa ga ri ga ma ni da ma ni sa, a complete vakra. Sa ni da ma ga ma pa ma ga ri sa, sa ga ri ga ma ni da ma ni sa, sa ni da ma ga ma pa ma ga ri sa. Or Sahana, sa re ga ma pa ma da ni sa, sa ni da pa ma ga ma ri ga ri sa. Or Ananda Bhairavi, sa ga ri ga ma pa da pa sa, sa ni da pa ma ga ri sa, where the arona was reverse of darbar, arona was vakra, avarona was straight. Slightly more rarer ragam. So let me give it to your guessing. Sa ga re ga ma pa ni sa, sa ni sa da pa ga ri sa. Any guesses? Yanta mudu. So where Tyagaraja in fact is a master, I would say, in terms of creating so many beautiful vakra ragas. And the greatness of the composers, why we always keep talking about Tyagaraja, Dikshidhar, Shyama Sastri, is not just about reverence, but the kind of musical magic that they have done with the notes. Because this is ideally, if you look at it, it is a janya of Chakravagam. But when you sing Bindu Malini, you never think of Chakravagam at all, because he has given the Vakratva in such a beautiful jumbled way that it gives you a completely new picture and you can only think about Bindu Malini. Like this, there are many ragams that he has done. And coming to the Vivadi, we talked about the Sampurna Vivadi. There are also many Vivadis which have been created in the Asampurna. For example, if you take Chandra Jyoti, sa re ga ma pa da sa sa da pa ma ga ri sa, ba ga ye ni ma ye len to, ba ga ye ni ma ye, sa re ga ma pa da sa da pa ma da 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 pa ma pa da 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 pa ma ga ri sa, da 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 pa ma pa da sa da pa ma da da pa ma pa da pa ma pa da da pa ma ga ri sa. And of course in the 72 you can find, actually if you look at it, the 72 is divided into such that the Vivadis actually occupy a major portion, where 40 ragas out of the 72 are Vivadi ragas and the remaining 32 only are the non-Vivadi ragas. So actually a major chunk is there here. And some ragas like to jump about here and there. So they are not in a proper order, but they're also very jumpy kind of a character, I would say. Like for example, if you take the ragam Kuntalavarali, sa ma pa ni da sa, sa ni da pa ma sa, sa ma pa ni da sa, sa ni da pa ma sa, Shivaya namavendre idayara chintanai செய்வோமே சதா Shivaya namavendre. So where you saw that there was quite a leap. Sa ma pa ni da sa. Then again, sa ni da pa ma. Jump from ma to the sa here. Or kadana kuduhulam. These are all ragams which are very, I mean, that's why they are also very bouncy and, kind of a jolly kind of feel it gives you. So the ragam also, though we may say that every ragam may not have I don't believe in the emotion theory actually and say that, or I don't believe in the medical therapy theory also saying that this raga cures blood pressure or this raga cures sugar and all that. I don't believe in that. But to me, the point is that any good music, anything which you love listening to, if you listen to it, definitely it will have an impact on you. Because here we have to really understand the fact that if somebody is really averse to music, avalge enna music potalum, it's not going to have an impact on them. So that's the first thing. Secondly, the genre of music also is very important because the kind of pacey cinema music may be very appealing to the youngsters today, but to me it seems very discordant. So now if you try to put that music and try to create some therapy, for me it will be more adverse in the sense that it may cause some headache to me. So it also depends. Adhe mari ragangal also, all of us have got some pet ragams. I'm sure you love listening to some ragams much more than the others. And they are very close to your heart, actually. So that way, listening to those kind of ragas probably gives you more happiness and joy. So it's a very relative thing, and I really cannot still accept the theory. Like in Western music, probably they are more scientific in their approach in terms of decoding the notes and trying to find out some emotional relationship. But our ragas, I feel, again, the same Ananda Bhairavi, for example, if somebody renders it very beautifully, it is nice. Now, if it's rendered in a horrible manner, I'm sure it's not going to give you that same pleasing effect. So there are very many factors actually in terms of the emotional quotient. So we'll not go into that now. Anyway, coming back to the notes, what I was mentioning here is that the notes, as I mentioned here, combine in different ways to give us ragams. And another beauty of our system is that the notes do not occur in the same frequency. That is another beauty where the same note may give us different colors. And that is where the beauty lies. For example, why do we say that Thodi is a very vast ragam? Or why do we say that Shankarabharanam is a very vast ragam? No, it has also got 7 notes like Kanakangi or Ratnangi. Why is it that this ragam seems to offer much more in terms of the dimension is because of the fact that there are notes, I'll show you an example, where the same note can be handled with different kind of gamakas. We are talking about gamakas or the oscillation. So if you take a ragam like Kanakangi, sa re ga ma pa da ni sa, you cannot do much with this ragam because the notes are very much positioned, and if I try to oscillate, it will be going into the danger zone. So ga ga ri ri sa re ga ga ri ri sa 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 re ga ma 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 ga ga ri ri sa sa sa. I can do only this much here. But take a ragam like Thodi, where sa re ga ma pa da ni sa sa ni da pa ma ga re sa. Now, the same ga, observe carefully, in different contexts it can show you different colors. So first, if I take a phrase like sa re ga ma ga re sa, so where ga re sa, the same ga in a different context, ga ma, again the same ga while coming down, it gives a slide, ga ma ga re sa, ga ma pa. Or if I'm going to skip that pa, da or ga, in its sthanam also sometimes it occurs. So what I want to convey here is that, or another example, sa re ga re sa, where the ga is just almost on the rishabha. So the ga, that is again the beauty of the system, where every note, though it has got a particular position, there are so many oscillations possible within that gamut of the position, and that's what gives the different colors and dimension. I'll look at one more example for you to show in different ragams. Now, say taking the same note, for example, I take the Chatushruti Dhaivata. Its position, if you take, is Da Pa. Now, the same Da, here again we could probably associate again with our human relationship as to how when you are very close to your own family, sister, then next level of relationship with cousins, next with friends, next with neighbors, like that. So when there is proximity of two notes, then that same note has got a different color. When there is a distance, it's a different color. So how it happens, we'll see. Like for example, in Karahara Priya, Padani Sa, Padani Sa Ni Da, Da 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 Ni Da Da Ni Da Ni Da Pa, Ma Padani Da Pa, Ma Padani Da Pa. Now the same Da, when it occurs in the context of Shankarabharanam, where it becomes the Kaisiki Nishada, third Nishada, Padani, it's the same Da. In the context of the first variety where you use the Ni to, Padani, the Da becomes plain and the Ni is oscillated. Whereas now if you have to push the Da in Shankarabharanam, you have to push it to reach that Ni, like Padani, Ni Da Padani, Pa Padani, Sa Ni Da Pa. So many varieties of the Da can be displayed in this context. Padani, Ni Da Pa. Kind of a tremor, kind of a small quivering oscillation on the Dha. Now imagine there is no Ni at all, like in Mohanam. Then what happens? Sa Re Ga Pa Da Sa. The Da oscillates but gets cut there because there is no Ni in between and it has to go to the Sa. So Sa Re Ga Pa Da Sa, Sa Re Ga Pa Da Sa. The same Da when there is no Pa now. For example, if you take Abogi, Ma da 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 ma ge re ga ma da 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 ma ge re ga ma da sa da sa da sa da sa da ma ge re. It wants to touch the Sa, so but it has to avoid the Ni. So it tries to bring in the Sa closer to it. See, say, the Sa, that is one way of handling. But then if it wants to cling to it, da sa da sa da sa da ma ge re ga ma da sa da ma ge re da 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 ma ge re ga ma da. Here you know that the Pa is not there, so it has to give a different picture. Here also it's another point comes to my mind is how the note Pa, when it comes to the picture, and the note Pa when it moves away from the picture, how two different kinds of imagery is formed. Immediately the example, of course, which comes to my mind is Mayamalagola and Lalita, for example. If you take Mayamalagola, you see how the Pa becomes kind of a support for the Ma and the Dha. Here you could probably compare to the Ma to a mother and the Ma and the Dha to two small children who, when you go out, you know, when in order that you don't get lost, you cling to your mother, both of them holding the hands of the mother and going safely. So here, it is more like, you know, that same feel I could get in Mayamalagola. Pa pa da pa pa ma pa da pa ma pa da pa ma ga ma pa ma ga ma da da pa ma ga ma ni da pa pa ma pa da pa ma pa da. So where the Dha and the Ma are actually relying on the pa for their existence itself, like pa ba da ba ma 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 ba da ba ma ba da ba ba ga ma ba da ba ba ga ma da ba ba ga ma pa ba ga ma 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 pa, that where pa ba ma pa ma. So where the pa is becoming, as I told you, the mother, like that, it is clinging on there to that. Or pa da 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 pa, the da emanates from the pa. Now the same ragam, just remove the pa, you can just imagine the mother going out of the scene now. So when the mother is out of the scene, the two children feel lost, and now they know that they have only the two of them to rely on each other. They have to hang on to each other in order to be safe. So what do? They try to connect themselves. In the absence of the mother, the ma and the dha try to connect themselves in order to remain safe and sound. So like ni da ma ga ma da ni za da ni da ma ga ma da ri za re ga ma da ni da ni da ni da ma da ni da ma ni da ma ga ma da ni da ni da ma ni da ma ga. All the other notes are there, but the ma and the dha have formed a perfect connect themselves. And also you see that because of this connect, the way the note oscillates also becomes totally different. Though it is a journey of Maya Malagola, the pa when removed, the dha and the ma have now become plain. These are all the small beauties that we have to enjoy actually in our raga system. Ma ma da da. If I do, automatically the pa sound will come. So I cannot do that here because there is no pa. So da da ma ga re ga ma da ma ga re ga ma da ma ga re ga ma da ma da ni da ma ga re za re ga ma da. So here also we could again another deeper aspect, if you want to go into the same thing. Just instead of even taking the dha, you just take the magari. Magari, let's take that, only that. Magari in the context of three ragams, Maya Malagola, Saveri, Malahari, Lalita. Now Maya Malagola is the parent here. And Lalita, Saveri and Malahari are the children here. But in the just, even without traversing the entire gamut with the Magari, you can show that it is Maya Malagola or Malahari or Saveri or whatever. Where, as I showed you, the ma in the context of Maya Malagola oscillates in connection with the pa. Pa ba ma ma ba da ba ma ga. Now if you look at the same Magari in the context of Saveri, Magari re sari pa magari, where the ga becomes a very big note here in terms of its execution to give you that imagery of Saveri. Now if you look at Lalita, magari, where magari, the tree glides beautifully from the ga to come to the rishabha. If you look at the same thing in, again coming back to Saveri, magari re, you are oscillating the re here. But when you do it in, as Lalita, magari re magari, ga ma da magari, ga ma da ni da magari. Or if you look at it from the point of Malahari, sa da ba magari sa, there is no halting anywhere. You see the Geetams, you would see Sada pa magari lambodara lagubikara, where you say magari sa. So here again the, as a very detailed way of looking at it, you see from the biggest point of view of how an arohana avarohana determines a ragam, then how the notes, the same note in the context of different ragams take different dimensions. The same note within the same ragam also takes different dimensions. And how one Melagartha to different Janyas, all of them actually carry the same variety. But then each of them displays a different color. We were talking about completeness in terms of the scale. There are also some ragams which may seem incomplete in terms of the scale or the octave. Like for example, if you take a ragam like Shankarabharanam, Todi, Bhairavi, Kalyani, all of them operate on the 3 octaves. Like it can be from Shankarabharanam, if you take pa, da, pa, sa, ri, ga, ma, pa, da, ni, sa, ri, ga, ma, pa, ma, ga, ri, sa, ni, da, pa, ma, ga, ri, sa, ni, da, pa. We are doing this. But now, or if you take Maya Malagala, sa, re, ga, ma, pa, da, ni, sa, ni, da, pa, ma, ga, ri, sa, ni, da, pa. So all the 3 octaves are operated. Now there is also ragams like, for example, Nadanama Kriya or Punnagavarali, which may not operate on these 3 octaves and have a very limited range. But yet they have a beauty on their own. For example, if you take Nadanama Kriya, sa, ri, ga, ma, pa, ma, ga, ri, sa, ni, da, sa, ri. So limited range, it doesn't go till the taras tai sa. Sa, ri, ga, ma, pa, da, pa, ma, ga, ri, sa, karuna jaladhe dasharathe kamaniyanana sugunanide karuna jaladhe. So where you saw that it did not have the complete gamut of sarigama padanisa, yet it is a beauty. So beauty in incompleteness also we could say. Or a ragam like Punnagavarali, Tavada Sogham, Tavada Sogham, Tavada Sogham, Dasharathe, Sariga ma pa Pabagarisa. So this completeness again also we could probably compare and say that somebody has got perfect features, we say. Now what is perfect feature? There is nothing actually like that. It is all one's own ideology. We say a sharp nose. So how sharp should the nose be to be called sharp? Or how blunt should it be to be called a blunt nose? These are all very relative things. Again, somebody says fair. Somebody says somebody is dark. So what is fair? Fair, there are different degrees. Darkness also, there are different degrees. So like that, we see here also this sense of complete or incomplete again is a very mystic thing, I would say, because it all depends on the mind as to how you perceive the sense of completeness itself. Another one interesting point I wanted to touch upon is in our normal life, of course, we first have the parents and the children get born from the parents only. It cannot happen vice versa. But in the case of ragas, it's very interesting because of the fact that the concept of the parent scheme came very much about 200 years back only, the Janaka Janya system. But the ragas as such were vogue for thousands and thousands of years it has been there. So for example, if you look at ragams like Varali, Sahana, Punnagavarali, Nadanama Kriya, Ananda Bhairavi, these all have been, Saveri, all these have been existent for thousands of years, and Tevaram, Pan and all, you are able to see the equivalent for all these Kambodi, Takkesi, Kambodi, all the Pans parallelly you can equate and see that many ragams like this Banturali and other things have been vogue many years back. So here, if you take it may sound weird, but then the Jhala Varali, which is supposed to be the Melagartha for Varali, was born only 200 years back, but whereas Varali was born thousands of years back. So there are other examples like this. For example, if you take Hindolam, it's a very ancient ragam, whereas its Janaka or the parent Nata Bhairavi is one of the 72 Melagarthas. Again, if you take Kambodi and Hari Kambodi, Kambodi is a very old ragam, and then that is a janya of Hari Kambodi. Or if you take Gamanashramam, that is the Janaka of Purvi Kalyani. Purvi Kalyani was in vogue many years back. And here also we see that the aspect of how sometimes, or rather many times, the Janaka is not as popular as the Janya. In many cases in life also we see that the parents are not very much known, but children become very illustrious and they attain great posts and they become very famous as artists or scientists or whatever. So like that we see that here also the Janya Ragas, in this case, like for example the Varali, the Hindolam, the Kambodi, which are all Janyas of the Melakatha is talking about, they are much more famous and popular, I would say, than the Janaka Ragas. Now, one more point about the Ragam which I would like to share with you is that how we say that the Sa and Pa, theoretically, in fact, all books say that the Sa and Pa are said to be Achala Swaras, that is, Swaras which do not move. And all the other notes have got the movements, the variation, etc. But we see that in certain contexts, the Sa Pa also get to move. How does it happen? It's not that always we sing Sa Pa. I don't mean that. In the context of certain notes, the Pa and the Sa tend to have an oscillatory movement. Like for example, if you take the Varali Pancharatnam, where Pa Pa Ma Pa Da Pa Ma Pa Da Pa Ma Ga Ga Ri. In the context of that Ma Pa Dha, you saw that the Pa also started actually oscillating. If you look intricately, Pa Pa was straight, Ma Pa Da Pa Ma Pa Da Pa. In fact, Tyagaraja reiterates that same phrase twice, probably to even give us an indication of this particular concept. You know, these are all very, the kind of compositions they've composed are revelation for us, you know, each time you look into it. Ordinarily, we will just sing that, but then I was just wondering, why should he sing that the same phrase twice? So probably also to make us understand that there is an oscillation going on behind that Pa. Pa Pa Ma Pa Da Pa Ma Pa Da Pa Ma Ga Ga Ri. So where the Pa here happens to have that oscillation. Or if you look at the Sa in the context of Ananda Bhairavi, Sa Ga Ri Ga Ma Pa Da Pa Sa, we don't do that. Pa Da Pa Sa. So from Pa Pa Sa, it goes from Pa to Sa. So there are many ragas where you see that the Sa gets that oscillatory movement also. So in certain contexts, it's interesting also to note that though we say that the Sa and Pa are straight notes and do not admit of oscillation, in certain contexts we see that they become oscillated. Or another example we take in the Bhairavi Swarajati. Sa Ni Sa. Here classic example of both the Sa and Pa being oscillated. You can see how he has given the phrase itself so beautifully in that last charana. Sa Ni Sa Pa Ma Pa Sa Ni Sa Pa Ma Pa Da Ni. After that it goes like that. So these two phrases itself gives an indication, beautiful indication that the Sa and Pa also in certain contexts get beautifully oscillated. Now, then coming to the number of notes which are minimally required to constitute a ragam. Anybody can guess? What are the minimum number of notes required to create a ragam? 4. Yes? 3. Okay. So again, this is an interesting thing for us to understand that the lakshanas also change from time to time. It's like, you know, it's the lakshya defines the lakshana defines the lakshya. So in all the books of Samamurthy, which are like the Bible for us to understand methodology of and the history of music, he says that minimum of 5 notes are required to create a ragam. So like sa re ga pa da sa sa da ba ga ri sa sa ga ma da ni sa sa ni da ba ga sa re ga ma da sa sa da ba ga ri sa. So like this he gives examples to show that minimum 5 notes are definitely required. But our musicians are always very creative. They say there are geniuses at every point of time in the history. So a person like Dr. Balamuli Krishna thought, why should we have 5 notes to create a ragam? Can't we create a ragam with 4 notes? So that's how the ragam Mahati got born. Sa ga pa ni sa sa ni pa ga sa. The cinema song obviously comes to your mind, Adishaya Ragam. So there, you see that here, sa ga pa ni sa sa ni pa ga sa ga pa. So now, Balamuli Krishna did not stop with that. So, in fact, in this another, he has created in 4-note a ragam called Lavangi. Sa re ma dha sa sa dha ma re sa. Okay, 4 done. Now, further down, he thought of creating a ragam called Trishakti. Sa ma pa sa sa pa ma sa. Now, if I were to create, I can also create 3-note ragams. That's not a big deal. So, what is the genius of these musicians is the fact that, because basically everybody knows that if you want to just combine 3 notes, you can combine anything. Sa, ga, pa, sa, you can combine. But that's not the point. After creating the ragam, they have created beautiful compositions in it for it to survive and for it to exist. That is important. Without the composition, just by singing up and down, sa, ma, pa, ma, sa, doesn't make any sense. But he has created beautiful compositions in Mahati, Lavangi, Trishakti, etc., where in fact, unless you look intently, you don't even realize there are only 3 notes or 4 notes. So that is the genius of the composer, where with great facility he has operated around 4 notes or 3 notes to give you that feel, you know. So here also another important thing that we come to conclude is that the theory can always be changed. There is no static thing as, in fact, if you take the Raga Lakshanas also, for example, in fact, Purvi Kalyani, if you take years back, you see that the Prayogam Padanisa was very much in vogue. Sa re ga ma padanisa. Now if I sing Padanisa, oh, what is this? Padanisa and Puri Kalyani. No, never. That's how we would say now. Pada pa sa sa ni ra pada pa sa. Now pada pa sa has become the stamp, I would say, of Purvi Kalyani. So we also understand that the theory or the Lakshya is not something very, it can't be static. It changes according to the Lakshana, according to how the practices happen at each point of time. Of course, again in Ragas, we see that, as I mentioned earlier, the different forms, each form is able to give a different or distinct color to the Ragam. So a simplified form of the Ragam happens in the Geetam. Then the melody comes out in full form, we see in the Varnam. Then the Sahitya element also comes in beautifully into the Kriti, where you are able to not only enjoy the Ragam and Talam and also the lyrical aspects. Especially when it is in a known language like Tamil that you know, then you are able to immediately associate yourself with the lyrical content also. So there is a 3-dimensional kind of enjoyment happening here, where the melody is enjoyed, the rhythm is enjoyed, the lyrics is enjoyed, so many things. Of course, the beauty of the poetry and so many things are there. So that is why we see that also the fact that there are so many forms. You may ask, why should only Kalyani, why should we have a Geetam? Again in Kalyani, why Varnam? Again a Kriti in Kalyani. Why so many Kalyanis in different forms? Because of the fact that each form gives a different dimension to the Ragam. And that's also the reason, again, the imaginative skills of the composers have been used. You see that if you take Kalyani, there are about, say, 100 composers who have composed in Kalyani. So what is happening? Is it the same Kalyani? Yes, you're not changing the Lakshana of the Ragam, but then each one through his own imagination gives it a distinct color. So for example, if you take Unnai Vere Gati Illai Amma, there it starts in a different way compared to Yeta Unera. That's a different way of approaching. Or Kamalam Bam Bhajare. Or Shama Sastri, Himadre Sute Pahimam. Or the Varnam, Vanaja Kshirai Veera. Or the Geetam, Kamala Jadala Vivala Sunayana Karivarada Karunambu. So in each, it manifests itself in different ways, and that is why the ragam, we say that why do you come back to a kachari? Again, also in terms of the manodharma, we have to understand that I may also sing the same alapana of Kalyani, X, Y, Z sings Kalyani only. But each one of us, we try to impose our own thought process, our own imagination as to how to create the form of Kalyani. That's why it's different. If I, X, Y, Z, everybody sings Kalyani in the same way, I'm sure you're not going to come back to a concert to listen. So you will say, Iniki Radha Bhaskar Kalyani Abdi Parna, and tomorrow you may go to a concert of Sikil Gurucharan and you may hear the Kalyani. You may think, okay, now let me see how the same Kalyani has been approached by him. How does he deliver the Kalyani? Or somebody, past master, you're listening. So you will find a vintage touch to that Kalyani. So the same Kalyani, the same Arohanam, the same Swaras, everything is there. But then there is no end to the presentation of Kalyani because of the fact that the creative element is employed by the composer as well as the artist each time. And so I would rather say that Kalyani is recreated each time. It is the recreation that is happening, and that is what you are enjoying. It is not that I'm creating Kalyani each time and you're enjoying. It is the recreation process of the Kalyani that is happening on stage, and that is what you are enjoying. Of course, the subject of ragas and notes is too vast. I'll just try to sum up, and if there are any questions, I'll be most happy to answer also. Summing up, we could say that the ragas of Carnatic music are so filled with beauty that every ragam, whether it's a performance or listening, it is indeed a very beautiful aesthetic experience. And as I said, there are 7.2 million ways of combining notes to form ragas. But then, only when there is a proper composition in that ragam, it blossoms as a ragam. Otherwise, it's just a scale. Suppose I say, Samapan, Samapani da Pamapani da sa. I can just create something vakram like this. But it doesn't make any sense because there is no composition in it. So composition, actually, we could say, crystallizes or freezes the raga for posterity. I always say that. A ragam, the composition freezes the raga for posterity. So that composition is very, very important. Now, if I want to look at a very ragam, like I said, Bindu Malini or Chandra Jyoti, how do I understand the ragam? It is only through the composition of the great masters. And the aesthetic extension of this composition is the manodharma aspect. And every ragam, for that matter, is so very, very vast. So, a performer cannot say that, oh, today I have sung Bhairavi and Shankarabharanam, and I actually completed all the possibilities that are in Shankarabharanam and there is nothing more to it. No artist can say that. Nor as a Rasika can you say that, oh, I have listened to enough of Shankarabharanam. I am complete in myself in terms of listening and there is nothing more to listen to in Shankarabharanam. It can never happen. So this also brings to the fact that the ragam is indeed so vast that nobody can really complete performing or listening to it. Each time you go into it, I would say probably it's like you could say that the ragam is a very, very vast ocean. And as performers or as rasikas, each time we plunge into it, we are able to just take out a very small drop only from it. Thank you very much. And if there are any questions on this, I would be very happy to answer. And please don't think that any question is too simple or fundamental, because any question only triggers the thought process of myself as well as the rasikas. So if you have anything, you can ask. If you don't ask, I suppose I am complete in myself or totally incomplete. I don't know, whichever way I can take it. பிரதிபத்தியமாக ஏன் ரெண்டுன்னு கேட்குறேன், பாக்கியெல்லாம் ஏன் மூணுன்னு கேட்குறேன்? See, this is a very scientific thing to explain. This is based on the frequency of the notes. So what are the frequencies available? இப்போ பார்த்தீங்கன்னா ஸ்ருதி அப்படின்னு எடுத்துட்டோன்னா there are innumerable ஸ்ருதிஸ். அண்ட் இந்த நோட்ஸ் ஃபார்மேஷன் எப்படி வந்திருக்குன்னா, எந்தெந்த ஸ்ருதி ஆடிபிளாக இருக்கோ, இப்போ சயின்டிஃபிக்காக நம்ம டிரைவ் பண்ணுறது நிறைய பண்ணல. இப்போ இந்த சாரிக்கு நடுவுலேயே பார்த்தீங்கன்னா ஸ்ருதிஸ்னு நிறையா இருக்குது, விச் ஆர் நாட் ஆடிபிள் டு த இயர். ஸோ பேசிக்கலி பேஸ்ட் ஆன் த பர்மிட்டேஷன் காம்பினேஷன், இப்போ நீங்கள் வந்து மாக்கும் பாக்கும் நடுவில் இருக்கிற கேப்பில் only one particular note is possible to be derived. நீங்கள் அதுக்கு மேலே அங்கே ஸ்பேஸ் கிடையாது. அதுக்கு இதை வந்து கிராஃபிக்காக போட்டு காமிச்சா இட் will be more easily understandable. வேர் சாரி ஆக்சுவலாக பார்த்தீங்கன்னா இப்போ இந்த 3 ரீ சொன்னது உங்களுக்கு வந்து இட்ஸ் ஸ்லைட்லி a complex subject. ஆக்சுவலாக தியரிட்டிக்கலாக பார்த்தீங்கன்னா எல்லாத்துலேயும் 2 தான் இருக்குது. 2 ரிஷபம், 2 காந்தாரம், 2 மத்தியமும், 2 தெய்வத்தம், 2 நிஷாதம் தான் இருக்குது. இப்போ இந்த மாங்கிறது மா பாக்கு நடுவில் த ஆடிபிள் ஸ்ருதி இஸ் ஒன்லி தட் மா. நீங்கள் அதுக்கு நடுவில் என்ன வேணாலும் பாடி பாருங்கள், வேறு எதுவும் பாட முடியாது உங்களால். ஸோ இட்ஸ் ஆக்சுவலி இதை வந்து ஒரு கால்குலேஷனில் நம்ம பண்ணி காமிச்சோன்னா அந்த ஃப்ரீக்வன்சி வேல்யூவில் 2 are only possible there, which is audible. இப்போ நிறைய unaudible sounds are there, that will not come into the count here. நம்மளுக்கு வந்து music is something which is auditory, so அதனால we take only the audible sounds. Anything else please? Yes madam.
They do swara frame first or lyrics? Lyrics comes first and then swara frame.
See, there are different ways, and lyrics come first or the swaras first, that's you are asking. இதுக்கும் சாமமூர்த்தி எல்லாத்துக்குமே பதில் சொல்லி வச்சிருக்கார். The person where lyrics coming first or swara coming first, both do not augur well for a uttama vagekara. So uttama vagekara is one where the lyrics and the music come out simultaneously. Like immediately you can think of Dikshadhar, Shama Sastri and Dikshadhar, where it's not like we say in Tamil room போட்டு யோசிக்கிறது, it's not like that, where you think that okay today I will write the lyrics, அப்புறம் இந்த லிரிக்ஸ்க்கு என்ன ராகம் போடுறது, இந்த இதுக்கு என்ன தாளம் போடுறது, இதை எப்படி மெட்டு அமைக்கிறது, it doesn't happen like that. But like for example there are also many examples where you can say like Ambujam Krishna and others, where they have written the lyrics but they have not composed the music. So somebody else composes the music for that. There are also some categories like that. They are not under, I won't call them as great Vagekaras because they have not put the tune to their composition. They have just written down the songs, somebody else put. For example, if you take very easily for you to understand Om Namo Narayana, which you hear, Om Namo Narayana, that is a composition of Ambujam Krishna. But it was put to tune by Charumati Ramachandran. Many of you may not know that. Like that, there are many compositions. Even Bharatiyar compositions, if you take, there are so many lyrics which this thing. But the other way around, like putting melody and then the lyrics doesn't work in Carnatic music. Whereas in cinema music, it works. You already have that beautiful composition. The cinema song, I remember. So where he puts the mettu first, and then he tells that you sing the lyrics for it. So that kind of thing operates very much in the cine field, where they have the mettu and then they try to fit in lyrics also. But here, generally, a good composer is one who can simultaneously bring out the outpour of the lyrics, and it also makes for a great composition only when both come together. Because I compose the lyrics and somebody else's thought process comes into the melody. Sometimes it works very well. Like Om Namo Narayana is very beautiful to listen to. You wouldn't even know that somebody composed the lyrics and somebody did the melody. Like that, there are many compositions like this. For example, Kure Endrumille, for example, you take a very classy example. Rajaji wrote the lyrics and Kadenallur Venkatraman put the melody, and MS brought the two together to make it one of the all-time hits forever. So where the thought process probably of the composer of the lyrics and the melody came together so beautifully. So that happens sometimes.
But not with Trinity. They came
Not with?
Trinity.
No, Trinity, that's why they are hailed as Mummurtigal and stand as a class apart. And sometimes it's very sad that like in Annamacharya and all, Purandarasa, they did compose, they did sing the songs. But sadly, as I was talking to Madam also, because of lack of documentation, and we didn't have any audio material at that time, nor any written material, so the melody has got totally lost. So you today also see that the same Purandarasa Kirtana, I will sing in Kambodi, somebody in Madhuvanti, somebody in Kalyani. So that is happening because we have lost out on the melody, we just have the lyrics here. Are we done? Some young girl is sitting there, you can ask any question. How about? என்ன கான்டெக்ட்ல கேட்குறேன்? இல்லை எல்லாமே மேடம் பஞ்சரத்னா எல்லாமே சைமல்டேனியஸாக அவர் பண்ணது தான். ஸ்வரம் பாடி அதுக்கு அப்படியே சாகித்யம் வந்தது தான் நம்மளுக்கு ஹிஸ்ட்ரியில் தெரியறது. அதனால தான் அதெல்லாம் ஒரு தனி கிளாஸ் அப்பார்ட். வேறு உட்காந்து நீங்கள் சொல்ல ஸ்வரத்தை எழுதிட்டு அப்புறம் இதுக்கு என்ன சாகித்யம் போடுறது தேடுறது அது மாதிரி கிடையாது. இட் டசன்ட் ஹேவ். And they are all very divine composers. That's why we almost worship them for the fact that not just because they were worshippers of, according to me at least, I am very strongly of that view that not because Tyagaraja worshipped Rama or Dikshadhar worshipped all the gods that we are worshipping them. It is because of the way they worshipped music and the exalted status that they achieved in music that we actually worship them for that, or Shama Sastri for that matter. I think we are done. Once again, I would like to sincerely thank Sri Tyaga Brahma Gana Sabha and its office bearers for this wonderful opportunity. It's always a pleasure performing or doing lecture demonstrations here, and I sincerely thank them for this wonderful opportunity. Namaskaram.
We sincerely thank Dr. Radha Bhaskar for giving such a wonderful performance, and we look forward to more of the same in the future.
Thank you.
We do not have any LegDem program in May. The next LegDem program will be on June 26th by Saket Raman. We welcome you to all attend to this program. Thank you very much.